right? Isaiah 62, let's call this one Until, understanding that the chapter may roughly break down into two halves, where he is saying that there should be no silence and no rest until he has accomplished some things on Jerusalem's behalf. Understanding the first half is going to talk about things he's going to say regarding his work, or the things that he has planned for them. And the second half is going to talk about the things he has planned for them to get done. For them to get done. Thus, the no silence on his behalf and the no rest on their behalf until all those things are finished. Taking it in order, though, verse 1 reads, "For Zion's sake, I will not keep silent, and for Jerusalem's sake, I will not be quiet, until her righteousness goes forth as brightness, and her salvation as a burning torch." Once again, can't escape it. Doing right is a fundamental of what he is building, and here he is specifically linking it to their salvation. Understanding that, the latter part of that first section is going to go on to talk about a number of shall statements. Verse 2 beginning, "The nations shall see your righteousness, and all the kings your glory." As he's going to say, "You shall be called by a new nation" at the end of verse 2. Verse 3, "You shall be a crown of beauty in the hand of the Lord." Verse 4, "You shall no more be termed forsaken, but you shall be called my delight," or the Lord's delight. The second section, starting in verse 6, talking about the no rest, really picking up in verse 7 where it says, "And give him," really the end of verse 6, "you who put the Lord in remembrance, take no rest, and give him no rest until he establishes Jerusalem and makes it a praise in the earth." Going on to talk about the ways in which he is bringing to an end the days in which they work to basically feed their enemies, saying he is bringing them into a time where, my paraphrase, what's theirs is actually going to be theirs, and they will be able to appreciate what they produce. Going on, however, in verse 10 to say, "Go through the gates, prepare the way of the people, build up the highways, clear it of stones, and lift up a signal over the peoples." Understanding that as the chapter closes, he's going to talk about the way in which his salvation comes, and his reward and his recompense is with them. Once again, giving us a type of, worst to first story in verse 12, concluding the chapter, where he's going to say, "And they shall be called the holy people, the redeemed of the Lord, and you shall be called sought out, a city not forsaken." A reputation that they may have quite possibly developed because of the way in which, as in verse 11, their salvation is linked to their holiness in verse 12, in much the way the chapter began, with their salvation not only being linked to their righteousness, but being preceded by their righteousness, something that we will not just see here in this chapter, but going even back to the Psalms. Psalm 37, verse 39, "The salvation of the righteous is from the Lord." Psalm 50, verse 23, "The one who offers thanksgiving as his sacrifice glorifies me. To one who orders his way rightly, I will show the salvation of God." Skipping to a few verses in Isaiah, where Isaiah 45, verse 8 will say, "Shower, O heavens, from above, and let the clouds rain down righteousness. Let the earth open, that salvation and righteousness may bear fruit." Chapter 46, verse 13 of Isaiah saying, "I bring near my righteousness. It is not far, and my salvation will not delay." Isaiah 51:5 saying, "My righteousness draws near. My salvation has gone out." Isaiah 56:1 probably even more clearly stating, "Keep justice and do righteousness, for soon my salvation will come and my righteousness will be revealed." One of the more contentious points in Christianity being the role of a believer's righteousness in their salvation. Understanding that that point can become a whole lot less contentious when we look at the context in which God has spoken of the relationship between righteousness and salvation, and understanding that Jesus himself said in the Sermon on the Mount, he has not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. This point is one that is informed quite a bit when you realize that Christ wasn't the one who started talking about salvation and its relationship to righteousness, as much as he seemed to be building on the way in which God was always seeking to perfect the people that he was calling to just do right. And as tempting as it can be to try to water down that standard that we see over and over again in the word, maybe think of it this way. Righteousness is hard, but life without it is so much harder. And as chapter 59 reminded us, I don't think you have to spend very long around people who have given up on righteousness to see exactly how difficult it can be. And even still, beyond Isaiah, spend enough time around people who lack integrity, and you'll get a chance to see exactly how exhausting life can be. Which is why we sometimes say, my prayer for you is my prayer for me. That instead of taking it upon ourselves to water down the consistent standard we see between both the old and new covenant, may we ask God to strengthen us to pursue righteousness so that we don't actually, as we sometimes say, contribute to creating the kind of environment we actually hate.